I can't believe you would do this to me! After everything we've been through!
My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for most of my life, my family believed I worked a boring computer job. That was the phrase they used, always with a polite smile, always with a tone that said unimpressive but harmless. What they didn't know was that for the last 6 years, I'd served as a supervisory special agent for the FBI Cybercrime Division, tracking international financial fraud and ransomware networks that had stolen millions from U.S. institutions. To them, I was just Sarah, the girl who fixes passwords. To me, every day was a battle fought in silence, one keystroke at a time. It started on a Sunday afternoon, like most of my disasters do, with a text from my mother. "Mom, cleaned out your old room. Finally getting rid of that junk you left behind." I stared at the screen, mid-bite into my sandwich. The word junk lodged in my chest. My old room, meaning the one I'd stayed in just last month, while my apartment building underwent emergency repairs. "Me, what exactly did you throw away?" "Mom, just old stuff. Broken laptop, some clothes, random papers. Nothing important." My fingers froze. My pulse quickened. "Me, which laptop?" "Mom, the black one that doesn't turn on." "Relax, it was garbage. I even sold it for $500. Some college kid from Facebook Marketplace." The sound that escaped me wasn't human. It was a gasp, sharp and guttural. I stood so fast my chair rolled back and crashed into the office wall. My coworkers looked up, startled. "Family emergency," I muttered, already walking toward the secure comms room, my federal badge swinging from my lanyard. That broken laptop wasn't broken. It was encrypted with a 15-character password and biometric lock, loaded with 3 years of classified investigation files, Operation Silent Wire. A single compromised file could unravel an entire international case, exposing undercover agents and $42 million in seized assets. And my mother had just sold it for $500 cash. Inside the secure room, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I forced myself to breathe evenly, dialing my mother through the encrypted line. She answered on the 3rd ring, cheerful as ever. "Sarah, we're just sitting down for dinner. Your brother and Amanda are here." "Mom," I interrupted, "where is the laptop?" "The what?" she asked, puzzled. "Oh, the black one. I sold it this morning. Some college kid came right over, gave me $500 in cash." Can you believe it? For something that doesn't even work. My voice dropped to the tone I used with suspects. "What was his name?" "I don't know. Why are you asking all this?" It was taking up space. I pressed my fingers to my forehead, closing my eyes. "Mom, listen to me carefully. That laptop was not mine to sell. It was federal property. You've committed a felony." There was a pause, and then her laughter. "Sarah, don't be dramatic. It was in your room. I assumed it was yours." "You assumed wrong. Don't delete any messages. Don't call that buyer. And don't touch anything else. I'm calling the cybercrime unit right now." "Sarah Jane Mitchell," she snapped, her voice tightening. "I do not appreciate your tone." But I'd already hung up. My heart pounded as I contacted Deputy Director Chin, my direct superior. "Sir, we have a situation," I said. My classified laptop was sold by a family member approximately 2 hours ago. There was silence, 3 long, heavy seconds before his voice came, low and firm. Jesus Christ. Mitchell, give me the address. I'm activating the emergency response team. 15 minutes later, I pulled into my parents' suburban driveway. 4 unmarked black vehicles already surrounded the house. Agents in plain clothes stood by, coordinated and calm. My mother stood on the porch, pale, clutching her phone. My father beside her looked more annoyed than frightened. My brother, Derek, sat on the steps, arms folded, his wife Amanda hovering behind him. Every face turned toward me as I stepped out, my badge visible under my blazer. Agent Mitchell, one of my team, Rodriguez, approached. Perimeter secured. Your mother's not cooperating. I exhaled slowly. That's her default setting. Inside, the air smelled like dinner, roast chicken, candles, the illusion of normalcy. My father's voice was tight. Sarah, your mother made a simple mistake. No need for all this. Dad, I said evenly. She sold classified federal property to an unknown buyer. That's not a simple mistake. It's a federal crime. Derek stood. Come on, Sarah. Mom didn't know. You left it here. What was she supposed to think? She was supposed to think, this isn't mine. I shouldn't sell it. My tone cut through the air like glass. Basic property law. Amanda's hand covered her mouth. A federal crime. 10 years maximum sentence, I said flatly. The room fell silent. From behind me, a new voice. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Deputy Director Chin of the FBI Cybercrime Unit. He stepped forward, his presence quiet but commanding. Your daughter works under my command. The laptop you sold this morning contains information tied to an ongoing federal investigation. My mother's color drained. Classified? She whispered. Sarah's just an IT worker. I'm a supervisory special agent, I said quietly. That laptop held evidence against an international cybercrime network responsible for stealing $42 million from you. Banks. My brother blinked. Wait, you work for the FBI? Yes, I said, meeting his gaze. Since I graduated Quantico 6 years ago. The truth hit them like a wave. My mother's voice trembled. But you said you worked in IT. I said what I was supposed to say, I replied. Operational security means I don't advertise what I do. Chin turned to her, his tone precise. Mrs. Mitchell, whether you knew what was on that laptop is irrelevant. Selling federal property is a serious offense. The buyer's phone is already offline. He either destroyed it or knows exactly what he has. She looked at me, horrified. Sarah, tell them I didn't know. Ignorance isn't a defense, I said, my voice breaking only slightly. You saw something that wasn't yours, and you sold it. Her eyes filled with tears. You never answer your phone. You're always too busy with your important job to talk to us. I took a shaky breath. My important job is literally protecting people from cybercriminals. And right now, thanks to you, 3 years of work might be gone. Rodriguez reappeared in the doorway. Sir, we've traced the buyer. College student named Marcus Chin. Apartment complex on Jefferson Avenue. Deputy Director Chin nodded. Itikar, take Agent Mitchell with you. I looked at my mother one last time as Rodriguez and I left the house. The wind had picked up, carrying the scent of her dinner out into the dark. Behind me, I could still hear her calling my name, half in fear, half in disbelief. And I realized, maybe for the first time, that she'd never really known who I was. By the time we reached the apartment complex on Jefferson Avenue, the sun had already set, and the streetlights flickered like dying stars. The night air was sharp, electric, charged with the kind of tension that only comes before a federal recovery operation. Rodriguez briefed the small team of agents beside me, their black vests glinting under the faint sodium glow. "We keep it quiet," he said. "No civilians. No press." I stood slightly apart, staring up at the cracked brick building. It wasn't much, just another off-campus housing block, filled with flickering windows and muffled music. Somewhere inside, a stranger unknowingly sat next to the key to $42 million worth of evidence, and to my career. Rodriguez glanced my way. "Mitchell, you good?" I nodded. "Let's get my laptop back." We ascended 3 flights of stairs, the smell of instant ramen and old carpet heavy in the hall. When we reached apartment 3 we could hear faint movement inside, someone pacing, maybe rearranging things. Rodriguez gave the knock we'd practiced 100 times in field simulations. 3 raps. Pause. 2 raps. FBI. Open the door. The noise inside stopped. Seconds ticked by, stretching into eternity. Then, finally, a voice. "I didn't do anything wrong." "Then you won't mind talking," Rodriguez replied, calm but firm. "Open up." The door creaked open a few inches, then wider. Standing there was a young man, barely 20, thin, dark circles under his eyes, the faint smell of solder and stale coffee clinging to him. Marcus Chin. He looked like every college kid who thought he could outsmart the world with a few lines of code. "Can we come in?" Rodriguez asked. Marcus hesitated, then nodded and stepped aside. The apartment was a cluttered cave of screens, motherboards, and blinking LEDs. My eyes went straight to the desk in the corner, where my black laptop sat, closed, plugged in, the FBI-issued serial number unmistakable. I moved toward it instinctively, my pulse thrumming in my ears. "Did you turn it on?" I asked. "I tried," he admitted, holding his hands up. It asked for a password and fingerprint. I was going to wipe it and reinstall Windows, but I didn't have time yet. I exhaled a shaky breath. Relief. 3 years of my life, uncompromised. "You haven't accessed any files?" He shook his head. "Couldn't if I wanted to. The encryption's crazy. What's going on? Who are you?" I held up my badge. "Supervisory Special Agent Sarah Mitchell, FBI Cybercrime Unit." "That's my laptop." "You unknowingly purchased stolen federal property." Marcus's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" "No, I didn't steal anything. Some lady sold it to me on Facebook. I have the messages." "Show me," I said. He fumbled for his phone, scrolling through his messages until the familiar name appeared. Linda Mitchell. My mother's profile picture smiled up from the screen, a photo from my brother's wedding, her arm around Dad, her eyes bright with pride. Linda Mitchell. Selling my daughter's old laptop. Doesn't turn on. Just collecting dust. "Marcus, I can offer $500. cash. Linda Mitchell. Deal. Just come by this morning. Every word made my stomach twist tighter. Rodriguez moved to the laptop, powered it on. The familiar FBI security seal appeared, then the lock screen. Mitchell, he said softly, you want to do the honors? I stepped forward, entered my 15-character passphrase, pressed my thumb to the biometric sensor. A heartbeat later, the desktop blinked alive, exactly as I'd left it 3 weeks ago. The encrypted drives mounted, the case files untouched. I almost cried from relief. System integrity confirmed, I whispered. Rodriguez turned to Marcus. You're not in trouble, son. You purchased in good faith, but we'll need a formal statement and this device as evidence. Marcus nodded weakly. Am I gonna get arrested? No, I said gently. But the woman who sold it to you might. As the evidence techs packed the laptop into a tamper-proof case, I caught my reflection in the dark window, tired, furious, and strangely hollow. My mother hadn't just endangered a case, she'd endangered my identity. The life I'd built was never meant to touch hers. But now it had collided head-on. Back at my parents' house, the scene was chaos, federal cars lining the street, neighbors filming from behind curtains. Rodriguez briefed Chin over the radio. Device secure. No file compromise. Returning to base. When I stepped out of the car, I could hear my father's voice raised in argument. You can't just take her away. She didn't mean any harm. Chin stood nearby, arms folded, unshaken. Intent doesn't erase the fact that she sold classified federal property. I walked past them toward the porch. My mother sat in the back of an unmarked car, mascara streaked, eyes red. My brother Derek glared at me as I approached, his voice trembling. You're really going to let them treat Mom like a criminal? She committed a federal crime, Derek. She didn't know. She didn't ask, I snapped. That's the difference between ignorance and negligence. He looked away, jaw tightening. You've changed. You used to care about family. I still do, I said quietly. That's why I'm not the one pressing charges. Deputy Director Chin turned toward me. Laptop secure? Yes, sir. No files accessed. The buyer cooperated fully. Good. Then we move to phase 2, accountability. He glanced toward my mother. What's your recommendation, Mitchell? My throat tightened. Sir, I'm too close to this. You decide. Chin nodded. Fair enough. Mrs. Mitchell will be released tonight with a formal warning and a $5,000 federal fine. The incident will remain in her permanent record. The words hung heavy in the air. My father's face went pale. 5,000? For a mistake. For selling classified property, Chin corrected evenly. She's extremely fortunate no data was breached. Otherwise, we'd be discussing felony sentencing. Derek slammed his hand against the railing. Unbelievable. What's unbelievable, I said, is that my own family laughs at my work, calls it boring, and then sells evidence from a federal investigation because they think it's junk. My mother finally spoke, her voice small. Sarah, please. I didn't know. Tell them you forgive me. I met her eyes. I can't do that right now. Why not? I'm your mother, Because I've spent years trying to prove I'm more than the daughter who fixes computers. And you just proved that. To you, I'll always be less. Silence. The kind that fills every corner of a home when the truth finally shows its face. Deputy Director Chin gave me a small nod, signaling the end of the operation. We'll debrief in the morning. As the agents packed up, I stood at the edge of the driveway, watching the last light fade from my parents' house. Behind the curtains, I saw neighbors whispering, filming, documenting this moment like spectators at a slow-motion disaster. That's the thing about justice. It's rarely glamorous. It doesn't come with applause. Sometimes, it just looks like a daughter walking away from her mother while red and blue lights fade in the distance. And sometimes, it feels like losing everything you were trying to protect. 3 days after the recovery, the air in the FBI field office still felt charged with static. The retrieved laptop sat sealed in an evidence vault, awaiting a full forensic audit. I stood behind the glass wall, watching the tech division run integrity checks, file verification, metadata analysis, encryption validation. Every click of their keyboards felt like a pulse returning to a body that had nearly flatlined. When the system finally flashed, no unauthorized access detected, I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. 3 years of work, safe. But the relief didn't erase the ache beneath my ribs. I had recovered a machine. I hadn't recovered trust. Deputy Director Chin approached, holding a clipboard. Good work, Mitchell. The evidence integrity is intact. We'll resume silent wire operations immediately. Yes, sir. He studied me for a moment. How are you holding up? I hesitated. Professionally, fine. Personally, complicated. That's expected, he said, his tone both clinical and kind. When family and federal law intersect, no one walks away unscathed. He wasn't wrong. Back home, complicated had become the new normal. My mother hadn't stopped calling. 17 missed calls in one day. 11 texts. All variations of the same message. We need to talk. You can't avoid your family forever. Please answer me, Sarah. But I couldn't bring myself to. Not yet. Every time I thought of her laughter that day, her breezy, I sold it for $500. My chest tightened like a fist. She hadn't meant to betray me, but she had. The intent didn't matter. The impact did. At work, I buried myself in case files. Rodriguez stopped by my desk one evening, holding 2 coffees. You've been here 14 hours straight, he said, handing me one. Go home. I stared at my monitor, digital paper trails, IP logs, wire transfers. Home's not exactly peaceful right now. He leaned against the doorframe. For what it's worth, you did everything right. Followed protocol, stayed professional. That's rare. It's not rare, I said, eyes still on the screen. It's training. He smiled faintly. Still takes guts. I didn't answer, because guts had nothing to do with it. I'd chosen duty over blood, and the guilt of that choice sat heavy, like armor I couldn't take off. 2 weeks later, my mother paid her $5,000 fine. She called immediately after, her voice trembling. Sarah, I paid it. It's over now, right? We can move on. I was sitting in my car outside the field office, the phone pressed to my ear. Mom, It's not that simple. I want to apologize. Please, can we talk? I closed my eyes. What do you want me to say? I want my daughter back. Her words sliced through me, but I stayed silent for a long time. Finally, I said, Mom, I'm not the daughter you think I am. I never was. What does that mean? It means you spent years assuming you knew who I was, what mattered to me, without ever asking. You built a version of me that was safe, small, and easy to understand. But that's not who I am. That's not true, she whispered. I've always supported you. No, I said softly. You've always had opinions about me. That's different from support. The line went quiet. Then she said, When did you become so cold? I'm not cold, Mom, I replied. I'm clear. There's a difference. She took a shaky breath. Come to dinner this Sunday. Please. Let's talk properly. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to decline, to keep distance, preserve peace. But part of me, the part that still wanted to believe in redemption, whispered go. I'll think about it, I said finally. That's all I ask, she said, and hung up. Sunday came faster than I wanted it to. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than usual. Every streetlight a silent witness to the tension building inside me. I parked outside the same house that, not long ago, had been surrounded by federal agents. Now it was quiet again, almost too quiet. I left my personal phone locked in the car, my new FBI-issued laptop secured in a vault miles away. The only things I carried were my badge, keys, and a small audio recorder, force of habit. Years of fieldwork had taught me that even family dinners could turn into evidence. My mother opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes were red-rimmed but hopeful, her smile trembling. You came. I said I'd think about it. Come in. Everyone's here. Inside, the dining room looked staged, polished, almost ceremonial. The good china gleamed under the chandelier, the same set she reserved for holidays or Derek's corporate milestones. My father stood by the fireplace, his expression neutral. Derek and Amanda sat at the table, their posture uncertain. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my father cleared his throat. Sarah, we want to apologize. I raised an eyebrow. For selling my laptop. For not taking your work seriously, he said. For making assumptions. For treating you like a child who needed our guidance. I didn't reply. My mother wrung her hands. We didn't understand what you do. We didn't know how important it was. You didn't ask, I said quietly. Derek shifted. Look, I Googled your division, the cybercrime unit. The stuff you handle, it's serious. I had no idea. You didn't know because you never cared to, I said, my tone flat but not cruel. And I couldn't tell you because I wasn't allowed to. My father frowned. Then help us understand now. I sat down slowly, folding my hands on the table. I investigate organized cybercriminals, people who steal from the vulnerable and the invisible. I track ransomware, identity theft, financial fraud. That laptop Mom sold contained evidence against a network that stole $42 million from American banks. It held witness lists, undercover agent reports, and encrypted data that took 3 years to compile. If that data had been breached, people could have died. The room went still. My mother's lips trembled. I didn't know. I know, I said softly. That's what makes it worse. Tears welled in her eyes. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I believe you, I said. But intent doesn't erase impact. My father reached across the table. Then tell us what we can do. I looked around the room, the family that had mocked my boring computer job, the people who now looked at me with a mix of fear and awe. Start by respecting boundaries, I said, and by treating my work with the seriousness it deserves. For the first time in years, they listened. Really listened. Outside, the night hummed softly, as if holding its breath. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen but also profoundly distant. Some fractures never fully heal. Some just stop bleeding. And as I sat there, I realized this dinner wasn't reconciliation. It was acknowledgement. The first step toward understanding, but also a quiet farewell to the version of me they thought they knew. For the next several minutes, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint clinking of my mother's bracelet as she fidgeted with her napkin, and the slow, methodical tick of the clock above the fireplace. Every second felt like a verdict, reminding us that time had moved forward, but understanding had not. Finally, I broke the silence. Before we move forward, there need to be some boundaries. My father's brow furrowed. Boundaries? Yes, I said, my tone even but firm. I've spent years living two lives, one as your daughter, one as a federal agent. Those two worlds collided the moment you sold that laptop, and now we have to make sure it never happens again. Derek leaned back, crossing his arms. You're talking like this is work. It is work, I said, meeting his gaze. My life is my work. It's not just a paycheck or a title. Every decision I make can affect the safety of real people. My mother looked down, voice trembling. We didn't mean to hurt you, Sarah. We really thought it was just an old laptop. You were always so private. That's part of the job, I replied quietly. Operational security means I can't talk about what I do. It's not because I don't trust you, it's because people's lives depend on secrecy. But you saw silence as distance, and instead of asking, you assumed. She opened her mouth to speak, but I lifted a hand gently. Let me finish. I took a slow breath, gathering my thoughts. First, my work is not up for discussion. I can't tell you details about my cases, my partners, or where I travel. If you can't accept that, then we won't have a relationship. Second, my personal property is off limits. You don't move it, sell it, or borrow it. Ever. If something belongs to me, assume it matters, even if you don't understand why. Third, respect my time. I can't always answer the phone, come to dinner, or attend family events. That's not neglect. That's duty. Derek frowned. That sounds cold. It's structure, I said, and it's how I stay alive. The words hung in the air like frost. For a moment, I saw a flash of something in my mother's eyes, fear, maybe realization that her daughter's world wasn't made of cubicles and code, but danger. I softened my tone. I don't expect you to understand the technical parts of what I do, but I need you to understand the weight. The things I see, the people we protect, they don't make the news. But they matter. That laptop wasn't just a computer, Mom. It was 3 years of lives, names, faces. You didn't just sell metal and circuits. You almost sold people's safety. Tears spilled down her cheeks, silent and steady. I didn't know, Sarah. I swear, I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said gently. But that's why I need you to listen now. Because next time, ignorance could cost lives. My father leaned forward, his voice low. So what now? You want us to just live in fear of touching anything you own? No, I said, shaking my head. I want you to live in respect of what you don't understand. The tension in the room shifted, still heavy, but not hostile. My mother wiped her eyes. We'll do better, she whispered. I promise. I'll take your rules seriously. I don't want rules, I said softly. I want understanding. Derek sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Guess we all underestimated you. Guess so, I said, and for the first time, I smiled, not out of triumph, but exhaustion. You always thought I was hiding from something boring. Turns out, I was hiding something terrifying. He chuckled weakly. Yeah, hard to joke about your boring office job after hearing you talk about federal crimes. Amanda spoke up for the first time. Sarah, for what it's worth, we're proud of you. I know that doesn't erase what happened, but it's true. Thank you, I said quietly. And for a fleeting second, I believed her. Later that night, after the dishes were cleared and the conversation drifted toward safer topics, my father's golf game, Derek's sales numbers, the new curtains Mom bought, I found myself drifting into silence. My family was talking, laughing carefully, rebuilding small talk like a bridge over a crater. But I couldn't shake the thought that some things, once broken, never return to what they were. They become something else, something more fragile, more deliberate. As I stood to leave, my mother followed me to the door. Sarah, she said softly, will you come back next week? For dinner? Maybe, I said. If I'm not working. She nodded. Of course. Your work comes first. It was the first time I'd ever heard her say those words and mean them. Outside, the cool night air wrapped around me like relief. The stars were faint behind the suburban haze, but for the first time in weeks, I looked up instead of down. My badge felt lighter in my pocket. My laptop, now secured in a federal vault, was safe. And so was I. The next morning, Deputy Director Chin called me into his office. His expression was unreadable, but not unkind. We've finalized our decision regarding your mother, he said. No criminal charges, a formal warning, fine paid, and a permanent record of the incident. I nodded. Understood. He leaned back. You did the right thing, Mitchell. You followed protocol. You didn't let family compromise your judgment. I looked down at my hands. It didn't feel right. It rarely does, he said. That's what makes it right. For a long moment, we sat in silence, the hum of the office beyond the door filling the space. Then he added quietly, You should know, your work on Silent Wire has been exceptional. You're one of the best analysts I've ever supervised. I swallowed hard. Thank you, sir. Take the rest of the week off, he said, sliding a folder across his desk. You've earned it. As I left his office, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, tired eyes, yes, but steady. For once, I wasn't just the daughter, or the analyst, or the silent one. I was all of them. And I had finally claimed the right to be. That evening, I sat in my apartment, staring at the city skyline. Notifications buzzed on my phone, texts from Mom, Derek, Amanda, but I didn't open them. Not yet. Some silences, I'd learned, were sacred. Outside, the city pulsed with light and noise and stories I'd never know. And somewhere in that chaos, I realized the line between family and duty isn't meant to be erased. It's meant to be guarded. Because sometimes, protecting what you love means standing on the opposite side of the law, not to defy it, but to defend it. 3 months had passed since that night, the night my mother sold a piece of my life for $500. Yet even now, the memory would surface at random moments, in the silence of my office after everyone had gone home, in the reflection of my badge under cold fluorescent light, in the way I hesitated every time I saw a message from her flash on my phone screen. On paper, everything had returned to normal. Operation Silent Wire was alive again, stronger, sharper, more guarded. My new laptop had even tighter encryption, dual biometric access, 256-bit key encryption, quantum-resistant algorithms. It was, as Chin liked to joke, a device even God would have trouble hacking. But inside me, something had changed. My mother's mistake had cracked something deeper, not my loyalty, not my discipline, but my faith. I sat in Chin's office one late evening, the city's amber skyline bleeding through the blinds. He was reviewing final briefings when he looked up at me. "Mitchell," he said, "you know, it's strange. We protect people from criminals every day, but the hardest battles are often inside our own homes." I smiled faintly. "You sound like a therapist, sir." "Occupational hazard," he replied, leaning back. "I've seen agents break from far less than what you've handled." "I didn't handle it," I said quietly. "I just survived it." He studied me. "Survival is handling it. You kept your head. You followed procedure. And you didn't let emotion derail protocol, even when your own mother was under investigation. That takes clarity most agents never master." I wanted to believe that. But clarity, I was learning, wasn't peace. It was just light, harsh, exposing, and impossible to turn off once you'd seen too much. "Sir," I asked, "did you ever have a case that hit too close to home?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Once," he said finally. "Before I joined cybercrime, I worked in counterintelligence. My brother got mixed up with the wrong people, foreign agents running laundering operations. I reported it. The bureau prosecuted him. He served 3 years. We haven't spoken since." His voice stayed calm, but there was something brittle underneath it. "We do what's necessary," he said. "That's what this badge means. It's not a shield. It's a promise. To the law, even when the law cuts through family." I nodded. I understood that more than ever. That weekend, I decided to go to Sunday dinner. Not because I'd forgiven everything, but because forgiveness, I realized, wasn't a one-time event. It was a process, a recalibration of distance. When I arrived, the house felt different. The lights were softer, quieter. There was no laughter echoing from the kitchen, no clinking wine glasses. Just my mother, standing in the doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. "You came," she said softly. "I did. I made roast. Your favorite." She said it like a peace offering. I nodded. "Thanks." We sat at the table in silence for a few minutes, the air thick with unspoken words. Then she reached across, placing a small white envelope between us. "This is the receipt," she said. "For the fine." I kept it. As a reminder, I glanced at it, $5,000, paid in full. "You didn't have to show me this." "I wanted to," she said, her voice trembling. "Because I never want to forget what my assumptions almost cost you." Her words hit me harder than I expected. "You didn't know, Mom," I said quietly. "I should have," she whispered. "That's the point. I should have asked instead of assuming. I should have believed that what you do mattered, even if I didn't understand it." For the first time, I saw something genuine in her eyes, not guilt, but humility. The kind that comes after you realize the consequences of your blindness. "I thought you were shutting us out," she continued. "But now I know you were protecting us. I didn't see the weight you were carrying. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her, really looked, and saw the woman who'd once taught me to tie my shoes, the woman who had burned her hand baking my 5th grade science project, the woman who'd sold a laptop because she thought her daughter's work didn't matter. And now, the woman who finally understood that it did. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For everything." "I know," I said softly. "And I'm sorry too, for how long it took me to say it." Her tears came fast, falling onto the tablecloth. "Do you forgive me?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but I can't forget." "I don't want you to," she said. "If forgetting means you lose the fire that makes you who you are, then don't. Just don't hate me." "I don't," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I never did." I was just tired of not being seen. We sat there in silence, the space between us finally honest, fragile, but real. The following week, Operation Silent Wire reached its conclusion. After months of digital pursuit, coordinated raids, and late-night data analysis, we arrested 17 individuals connected to the cybercrime network. We seized $42 million in assets and dismantled one of the most sophisticated online theft operations in U.S. history. The headlines called it a silent war won by invisible soldiers. The FBI held a press conference. Deputy Director Chin spoke on national television, but he mentioned my name only once. Agent Mitchell, lead analyst. That was enough. Recognition wasn't what I'd fought for. It was the integrity of the mission. That night, my mother called. "Was that your case on the news?" "I can't discuss active investigations," I replied automatically. "But it's not active anymore," she said gently. "It's over, isn't it?" A pause. Then I smiled. "Yes, Mom. It's over." For the first time, she didn't follow up with 1,000 questions. She just said, "I'm proud of you, Sarah." "Thank you," I whispered. Weeks later, I went home again for dinner. This time, there were no heavy silences, no veiled guilt. My mother asked about my apartment. My father talked about his golf swing. Derek brought up a movie he thought I'd like. Normal. Almost painfully so. And when I stood to leave, my mother hugged me tightly. "Take care of yourself," she said. "I always do." "I know," she said, smiling faintly. "Just don't carry the whole world alone." As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror, her silhouette framed by the doorway light, small but steady. For the first time in years, it felt like we were finally standing on the same side. Not because she understood everything, but because she finally respected the things she never could. And in a world built on secrets, that was the closest thing to peace I could hope for. When Operation Silent Wire officially closed, the Bureau called it one of the most successful takedowns in the Cybercrime Division's history. To the outside world, it was just another headline: FBI dismantles $42 million cyber fraud network. But to me, it was 3 years of sleepless nights, 30,000 pages of encrypted code, and one near disaster that had almost undone it all. I didn't attend the press conference. I stayed at my desk, sipping coffee that had long gone cold, watching the live broadcast from a muted monitor. Deputy Director Chin stood before the cameras, steady and composed, thanking the tireless efforts of his team. He didn't mention my mother, of course, or the fine, or the fact that the case had almost collapsed because of a single Facebook Marketplace sale. That was the thing about justice. It wasn't cinematic. It didn't roar. It whispered. It waited for people like us to do the quiet work in the dark. That evening, as the last agents trickled out of the field office, I lingered by the window. The city stretched below me, an endless circuit board of light, pulsing with data and secrets. Somewhere in those signals, new crimes were already being born. But for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel exhausted, just present. The door creaked open behind me. Rodriguez leaned against the frame, holding a takeout bag. "You didn't show up for the team dinner," he said. "Chin even bought the first round. You know how rare that is?" I smiled faintly. "I'm celebrating in my own way." He raised an eyebrow. "By staring out a window." "By remembering why we do what we do," I said quietly. "Sometimes the world forgets." "We can't afford to." He nodded slowly. "You ever tell your family the case is done?" I hesitated. "Not officially, but they saw the news." "And?" "They finally believe I do more than fix passwords." He chuckled. "Took a federal raid for them to get it, huh?" "Apparently." There was a pause. Then he said, "You know, most people in your position would have cracked." Family stuff. It's the Achilles heel of half this agency." "I almost did crack," I admitted. But it wasn't the pressure of the case. It was realizing how easily people you love can dismiss the life you've built. He studied me for a moment. "You ever gonna let them all the way back in?" "I don't know," I said. "Maybe that's not the point. Maybe it's about finding the right distance where love doesn't erase respect." Rodriguez smiled faintly. "That's a very FBI thing to say. I'll take that as a compliment." 2 weeks later, I went back to my parents' house for dinner again. This time, there were no tense silences, no undercurrents of guilt. Just small talk, laughter, the clinking of forks. The kind of normal that feels both ordinary and miraculous. After dinner, my mother led me to the living room. on the wall above the fireplace, where she used to hang family photos, was something new, a framed newspaper clipping of the silent wire case. The headline gleamed under the glass. "I saw this online," she said softly. "I thought it deserved a place here." I stared at it for a moment, speechless. "Mom, you didn't have to—" "I know," she interrupted. "But I wanted to. Because I finally understand. What you do matters, even if I'll never know all the details. And I wanted to remember that the next time I feel tempted to clean up your room." I laughed, the sound catching somewhere between disbelief and gratitude. "That's fair?" She smiled, brushing invisible dust from the frame. "You know, when you were a little girl, you used to say you wanted to save people without anyone knowing. I thought you meant volunteering." "I didn't realize you meant this." "I guess I just took it literally," I said, my voice softer now. She turned to me, her eyes full of quiet pride. "You did. And I'm proud of you, Sarah. I just wish I'd said that sooner." "You're saying it now," I said. Later that night, I drove home under the hum of streetlights, the roads empty, the city folded in sleep. I thought about everything that had happened, the sting of betrayal, the weight of forgiveness, the blurred line between duty and family. I thought about my brother, who'd started calling me Agent Mitchell half-jokingly, as if trying to make up for years of calling my work boring. I thought about my father, who'd begun reading cybersecurity articles, trying to bridge a world he'd once dismissed. And I thought about my mother, how guilt had turned into understanding, and how understanding had turned into respect. No, it wasn't perfect. It never would be. But perfection was never the goal. Boundaries were. Because boundaries, I'd learned, don't push people away. They teach them how to come closer without breaking what keeps you whole. A month later, Silent Wire earned an internal commendation. The agency circulated a memo naming the core analysts. I didn't attend the ceremony. Instead, I stayed in the quiet hum of my office, finishing a report on a new emerging ransomware group. When Chin stopped by, I looked up. "Sir," I said, "do you ever think about how much of our work depends on trust?" "All the time," he replied. "Trust in systems, trust in people. Lose either, and everything collapses." I nodded. "That's what I learned from this." He smiled. "Good. Then you're ready for your next case." That weekend, my mother texted me, "Dinner tomorrow? Just the three of us. No Facebook sales. I promise." I couldn't help but laugh. "I'll bring dessert," I replied. For the first time in months, I felt light. Not because everything was fixed, but because we had learned to live in truth. Messy, human, fragile truth. Some secrets, I'd realized, exist not to be shared, but to protect. Some silences aren't walls, they're shields. And maybe that was what family was supposed to be too. Not perfect understanding, but imperfect faith that love can survive what knowledge cannot. I parked my car in front of my parents' house the next evening, watching the lights flicker warmly inside. My new laptop was locked in the bureau vault. My badge sat in my jacket pocket, reflecting the faint porch light. And as I stepped out, I thought, you can't choose where you come from. But you can choose what you protect, and sometimes that means protecting the people who almost destroyed everything. Because that's what love looks like when it finally grows up. It's strange how silence can feel heavier than sound. Months after Silent Wire ended, my life had fallen into rhythm again. Long nights in the cyber unit, morning runs through the city, quiet dinners alone with my thoughts. But sometimes, when I walked past the evidence vault, I'd still see the reflection of that black laptop in my mind, a ghost of the chaos it almost caused, and the clarity it ultimately gave me. Every now and then, Mom still called. The conversations were softer now, almost careful, like two people learning to speak a new language built from apology and patience. She'd tell me about the garden, the new curtains, Dad's golf swing. She never mentioned the laptop again. Neither did I. Some wounds don't need reopening to remind you of their lesson. One Sunday afternoon, she called and said, "We're having dinner tonight. Just family. No guests. I promise." I smiled to myself. Is this a trap? "Only if I serve your least favorite casserole," she said, laughing. "Come home, Sarah." When I arrived, the house looked the same wind chimes on the porch, the same flickering kitchen light Dad still hadn't fixed. But something intangible had shifted. The air wasn't heavy anymore. It was ordinary, comfortable, even. Dinner was simple. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, a bottle of wine that Derek had brought because work finally gave him a bonus. The laughter was real this time, unforced. Amanda teased Derek for bragging. Dad asked about my apartment. Mom passed me the salt without saying a word. For once, it felt like family, not performance. After dessert, as the plates were cleared, Mom said quietly, "You know, I never told you what I did after that day." I looked up, cautious. "What do you mean?" "After the agents left. After the fine. After you drove away. I joined an online course about digital safety. Learned about data encryption, scams, and privacy laws. I even volunteer now, teaching older folks in the neighborhood how to protect their information online." I blinked, stunned. "You what?" She smiled. "Turns out, your boring computer work rubbed off on me. For a second, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry." "That's actually amazing, Mom. I figured I couldn't undo what I did. But I could at least make sure no one else makes the same mistake." Dad nodded. "She's been giving free workshops at the library. They call her Cyber Linda." "Oh God," I groaned, but I couldn't stop smiling. "Hey," Derek said, grinning. "At least one of us is fighting crime now." For the first time in years, I laughed until I couldn't breathe. It wasn't forced, or defensive, or polite. It was real. That kind of laughter that mends something inside you without asking permission. Later, when the house grew quiet and the night air hummed softly outside, Mom walked me to the door. "You know," she said, "I used to think pride was about showing the world your child's success. Now I know it's about something else. It's about finally understanding who your child really is." I met her eyes. "And who's that?" "A woman who protects strangers as if they were family," she said softly. Even when her own family forgot how to protect her. The lump in my throat made it hard to speak. That's kinder than I deserve. No, she said, shaking her head. That's exactly what you deserve. She hugged me then, tight, trembling, and unguarded. Thank you, she whispered, for saving more than a laptop. I smiled into her shoulder. You're welcome, Mom. The next morning, I returned to work. Another day, another case file. A new network to trace, another string of lives to protect. The same quiet war, invisible but vital. But this time, my mind was steady. I wasn't carrying anger anymore, only purpose. When Rodriguez passed my desk, he tapped the headline taped to my monitor. Operation Silent Wire, FBI saves millions in global cyber takedown. Never gets old, huh? He said. I smiled. No, but it reminds me how easily everything can go wrong when we stop valuing what matters. He tilted his head. That about your case or your mom? Both, I said. That evening, I left the office late. The streets of Diquioros shimmered under the amber glow of streetlights. I stopped by a small bakery and bought a box of sugar cookies, my mother's favorite. When I got home, I sent her a photo of them with a short message. For Cyber Linda, from your boring computer daughter. She replied a minute later. Best gift ever. Love you, Agent Mitchell. I laughed out loud in my kitchen, a sound that felt like closure, like forgiveness made real through something as simple as sugar and flour. And maybe that's what life really is, not the grand gestures, but the quiet reckonings. The moments when the people who hurt you start learning how to protect what you stand for. In the end, my mother didn't just sell a laptop. She sold a piece of ignorance and bought back awareness, humility, and understanding. And I didn't just recover government property. I recovered the meaning of boundaries, of trust, of love that respects silence instead of resenting it. So, to everyone watching this story, maybe you've been Sarah, maybe you've been Linda, maybe you've been both. Whatever side you've stood on, remember this: respect isn't about knowing everything. It's about protecting what you don't understand. And love, real love, begins when we finally learn the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, please subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and take care of the people and the secrets that matter most. Wishing you peace, health, and understanding in your own family. Until next time, stay safe, stay kind,